Living longer, living healthier, living better than ever before. Welcome to Mountain Pacific's Healthy Living for Life, a weekly series that gives you the information, education, and expert insight you need to become an active participant in today's ever-changing healthcare climate. Here now is today's program host.
As we age, our social circles tend to get smaller and smaller and often go away altogether. Whether it's due to retirement, the death of loved ones, or personal health issues, more than 40% of older adults who live alone are socially isolated, putting their physical and mental health at risk. Welcome to Healthy Living for Life, a show dedicated to helping you do just that. I'm your host, Lisa Sather. We'll talk about the risks of social isolation right after these messages. Welcome back. Millions of older Americans are living in or are at risk of isolation. And now studies are showing that older adults who are socially isolated are at a greater risk for poor health and even early death. Joining us this morning to talk about the impact of social isolation is Nancy Anderson from AARP. Nancy, thank you for being here.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. So it's interesting to think about loneliness as a public health issue, but isolation is actually getting the attention of federal public health officials. Can you talk to us about why that is?
Yes, I think that it's astounding to know that older adults with limited social contacts have cost Medicare $6.7 billion with a B dollars a year. And it's just amazing to me. Not only is it costly, but those individuals that are isolated, they suffer from more chronic diseases, they suffer from emotional diseases like depression and anxiety. It really has the impact of smoking almost 15 cigarettes a day, which is astounding to me.
Amazing. So does isolation basically mean the person lives alone, or what does it mean when someone is isolated or at risk for isolation?
Well, it doesn't mean just that they live alone. There are often people that live alone because they choose to. They're very satisfied. They still have lots of connections in the community and a circle of friends and activity. Loneliness and isolation are two different things. Okay. Loneliness really is kind of an evaluation of the quality of your relationships, whether you're feeling satisfied with those relationships. But isolation is the quantity. You really don't have any relationships outside of your home, or you can't get out of your home to connect with people. So it's kind of the quantity of your contacts.
That makes sense. So could you possibly give us some examples of then what it means to be isolated or at risk of isolation compared to perceiving isolation or experiencing loneliness?
Sure. You can be geographically isolated or even live alone. That just means you don't have neighbors that are close, but you can still be in contact with people. But if you're socially isolated, you really don't have anyone that you're having a relationship with that you're able to speak with on a regular basis. You might not see anyone. Maybe you don't drive, so you can't get out of the house. The winter weather, this winter has been awful, so absolutely. I'm sure that's really affected a lot of older adults, their ability to get out and about and to connect in the community.
So folks watching at home may especially relate to feeling geographically isolated. Can you talk about your location, a person's location, and how that can contribute to social isolation, especially Montana?
Right. You know, Montana's so rural, and there just aren't the support systems in some of those rural areas that you might find in a city like Billings or Helena. Although I'm happy to report that there are senior centers in communities large and small across the state and in Wyoming as well. It's really important, I think, to look at that as a resource because senior centers are just a wealth of available opportunities. They have congregate meals, so you can sit with friends during lunch. They have games, they have card day, they go on outings. So that's really a great spot in a rural community or even in a city to connect with others and to get involved.
Great. Can you talk about some of the more common reasons as to why isolation is more prevalent among older adults? You touched a little bit on it earlier, but in more specifics.
Right. Well, we're living longer these days, and often when we live longer, we're living with some chronic ailments. Maybe we're not as mobile as we used to be, so that's a big issue. Also, you work for years and you retire, and you've lost that family of work colleagues that you saw every day. Not only that, but you have less money, so maybe you don't do some of the social things that you used to do. There's divorce. Divorce is much more prevalent these days than it used to be. And illness, loss of a spouse. There's just many reasons as we age. Oftentimes some of our friends move away to be closer to their kids. Our kids grow, they're adults, they move away. So, there's a lot of factors that feed into that.
So experts are saying that isolation among older adults is expected to grow as a national problem. Why is that?
Right. Well, we're living longer. We're living longer, but there are lots of health issues that follow us into that longer life. And when your mobility goes, if your health starts to go, then it's very easy to become isolated. For example, I'm a younger person, I'm still working full time, but I had a hip replacement 2 years ago. I was married, I still worked every day, but boy, my social activities, my world got very small because I didn't want to go to a restaurant if the parking lot was long, or if there was a big lobby inside, or if I would have to stand and wait. My husband did all the grocery shopping. I mean, I can really relate to what an older person would go through when they don't have the outlet that I had. So it can be a very lonely situation.
Thank you for that personal example. That speaks volumes. So we're going to dig into this deeper during the show and on next week's show too, but can you provide any general tips for how people can avoid isolation?
Well, get involved. Get involved in your community, stay involved in your church, volunteer in the community. And boy, I'm with AARP and we have a super team of volunteers. They get to do fun things in the community. We offer free movies, sports events, concerts, and many of them have come to us as volunteers solo, but they've made friends in that volunteer team and they do things socially now. So they feel like they're giving back, but they're also really engaged in the community and building a new core of friends. So I think it's a really positive way to get involved in the community.
Great, thank you. We're going to take a quick break and we'll come back and visit with you in just a second. Coming up next, we'll have some tips for those folks who do struggle with getting out of the house due to health or other reasons, and we'll find out some options for staying connected to the community. Stay tuned.